Hey, what's up? You're watching Historiando, the channel where I make history fun to watch. I'm a history nerd and a university student, and I have a passion for exploring the past and uncovering its secrets. Whether it's ancient civilizations, medieval wars, or modern revolutions, I'll tell you all about it. So, buckle up and get ready for a wild ride through time with me on Historiando. In this first video, I'm going to tackle a question that might blow your mind. What the heck is history? Is it the past? Is it just a bunch of stuff that happened a long time ago and we read about in boring books? Or is it something deeper and more meaningful that helps us make sense of the present and the future? To try to answer this question, I'm going to use the notes and ideas I got from reading over and over again the book The Idea of History by Robin George Collingwood, a British dude who was a philosopher and a historian and who wrote this book in the 1930s. I hope you find it interesting and that you join the conversation in the comments with your thoughts and suggestions. So let's get this party started. But what is history really? How do we know what happened? And why do we care? Well, Mr. Collingwood had some ideas about that. He said that history is not just facts and dates, but a way of thinking. And different people might think differently about history. But there are also some things that most people agree on, and those things are more reliable than others. History is like a puzzle that we try to solve with clues and common sense. But not everyone can solve it. You need to have some skills and knowledge to do it right. And there are many ways to solve it. Okay, so Collingwood said that history is a way of thinking, right? But who can think like a historian? Well, he said that you need to have some experience of doing history. You need to be a historian yourself. Now you might say, hey, I learned some history at school. Does that count? Well, not really. Collingwood said that most people who learn some history at school don't really get it. They just memorize some facts and dates, but they don't understand how history works. It's like going to Paris for a weekend and thinking you know everything about France. That's not enough. You need to spend more time and effort to really appreciate the culture and the people. The same goes for history. You need to dig deeper and use your brain more to really appreciate the past. So, Collingwood said that you need to be a historian to think like a historian. But that's not all. He also said that you need to have an open mind. You can't just believe everything you hear or read. You have to question and challenge your sources, especially those boring textbooks that you use at school. They are not the real deal. They are just summaries and interpretations of other people's work. You have to go to the original sources, like documents, letters, diaries, artifacts, etc. And you have to think for yourself. You have to reflect on what you find and what it means. You have to use your imagination and your logic. That's how you do history like a pro. Alright, so we learned a lot about history from Collingwood. But we still don't have a clear answer to our main question. What is history? Well, Collingwood said that we can't answer that question with one word or one sentence. We have to break it down into 4 smaller questions. And these questions are, what does history mean? What does history study? How does history do it? And why does history matter? These are the questions that we need to answer if we want to understand what history all is about. Let's start with the first one. What does history mean? Well, Collingwood said that history is a kind of question. A question that we want to answer. And that makes history a kind of science. You know, like astronomy, geology, or psychology. But not exactly the same. History is a special kind of science. But what makes it special? Well, Collingwood said that science is not just about collecting facts and putting them in order. That's boring and useless. Science is about finding out new things. Things that we don't know yet. Things that we are curious about. Like, how old is the universe? What makes volcanoes erupt? How do people think and feel? How can we make a robot talk? These are all questions that science tries to answer. And history does the same thing, but with different questions. Questions about the past. That's what history means. It means asking and answering questions about the past. But how do we do that? What does history study? How do we find out what happened in the past? Well, Collingwood said that history studies things that are left behind by the past. Things that we can see, touch, and read today. Things like books, letters, paintings, statues, coins, buildings, etc. He called these things testimonies. Testimonies are like clues that tell us something about the past. But they don't tell us everything. They don't speak for themselves. We have to figure out what they mean. We have to interpret them. We have to use our brains and our imagination to make sense of them. We have to ask them questions and try to get answers. That's how history studies the past. It studies the testimonies that the past left behind. Okay, so we know what history means, what history studies, and how history does it. But there's one more question left. Why does history matter? Why should we care about history? Why should we learn history? Well, Mr. Collingwood said that history matters because it helps us know ourselves. It helps us understand who we are as human beings, not just as individuals, but as a group, as a species, as a civilization. To know ourselves, we need to know what we are capable of, what we can do. And the best way to know that is to look at what we have done in the past, how we have lived, worked, fought, loved, created, destroyed, and changed the world. History shows us what humans have done, and in that sense what humans are. That's why history matters, because it teaches us about ourselves. I hope you enjoyed this video where we explored Collingwood's ideas about history. I think he gave us some interesting and useful insights into what history is and why it matters. I also think he challenged us to think more critically and creatively about the past and ourselves. But I also have even more questions than before. For example, how can we be sure that we are interpreting the testimonies correctly? How can we avoid bias and prejudice in our historical thinking? How can we deal with the gaps and contradictions in the historical record? How can we respect the diversity and complexity of human experiences and cultures? How can we balance our self-knowledge with our empathy and responsibility towards others? These are some of the questions that I would like to explore more in the future. What about you? What do you think of Collingwood's ideas? Do you agree or disagree with him? Do you have any questions or comments? Let me know in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos on history. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye-bye.